Hello, this is Chloe at innerwhispers.co.uk. Today I'd like to do a video review of the Goddesses and Sirens deck by Stacey DeMarco and with illustrations by Jimmy Manton. This deck came out at the end of 2011 and is a very beautiful deck. It includes cards both of traditional goddesses and of other females from history who perhaps don't quite count as goddesses and yet who have strong archetypal energy. For example, Helen of Troy. I wanted to share with you some of the images of this deck. You can see here the box that it comes in, quite solid, and the book that accompanies it, which is detailed, written by Stacey DeMarco, and really very good. Now I'd like to take a look at some of the images of the deck. One of the things that I like about this deck is the fact that it shows females from different cultures. For example, here we have Amaterasu, a Japanese sun goddess. We also have Yemaya, an African water goddess. Kuan Yin, a Chinese goddess of compassion. And White Buffalo Woman, a Native American goddess. Another thing that I like about the deck is the fact that we have quite dark goddesses shown, and I like the fact that this deck isn't afraid to go to those dark places. So for example, with these Sirens of Temptation, we see their beautiful version and also their scary version, what they'll turn into once they've tempted you in. We have a rather evil-looking Baba Yaga, even though her keyword is authenticity. And we have a scary-looking Kali, representing fear. Sorry. One of the things that I like less about this deck is the fact that, other than these dark depictions where the females are quite deformed, the majority of the women are pretty much perky and botoxed and very slim. For example, the only female who really represents the mother archetype is Hathor, and yet she's waif-like with her huge belly, and her keyword is contentment. However, to me she doesn't look particularly content. She looks a little bit ill and unhappy, to be honest. Nevertheless. Also, we only really have one crone archetype as well, Sheila Nagig, and even then she's pretty beautiful and perky for a crone, shall we say. Nevertheless, the fact that all the females in this deck are fairly attractive unless they're deformed isn't the thing that I dislike most about this deck. Overall, I think it's a beautifully executed deck. I really like the goddesses that have been chosen, and the depictions are very attractive, even if that isn't necessarily always appropriate. My main quibble, I guess, with the deck is the fact that there isn't very much symbolism on a lot of the cards. Most of these women look like they're in the maiden epoch. They're strong and independent, young and beautiful, rather warrior-like. For example, here we have Eoster, who represents Easter time and new beginnings. And looking at the card, I'm not sure that you could really make out that that's a new dawn coming behind her. It could be a lot of different things. It's not that clear. And other than that, it's pretty barren of symbolism. Whereas if we look into Stacey DeMarco's lovely book, the symbols that she says are associated with this goddess are bird, rabbit, young girl with flowers in her hair, eggs, a bud poking through the melting snow, and the breaking dawn. None of those actually appear on the card, which is a real shame, because I have to say that Stacey DeMarco's book is, for me, probably the best thing about this deck. She gives a lot of detail on the different goddesses and archetypes. She offers up affirmations, and she offers up different ways of working with the cards. She also gives quite a bit of background information. For example, with Eoster, she gave some mythology about this goddess that I had never heard before. Not that she's a goddess I had particularly studied, but nevertheless it's nice that even though I've got about 10 goddess decks and have read quite widely on the subject, she still managed to come up with something that I hadn't heard of and that made a lot of sense. I'd like to end by looking at a few of my favourite cards from this deck. The first is Boudica, and even though she is once again a kind of warrior woman fighting, that really fits with the archetype of Boudica, who obviously wasn't a goddess. She's a historical character, and she probably wasn't quite as young and beautiful as this, but still I like her red hair, her fieriness, her strength, and the fact that it is appropriate that she's a warrior woman. I also really like the Persephone card representing cycles. Here she's shown in her Queen of the Underworld form rather than her Persephone the abducted maiden form. So a much stronger sense, but showing that idea of cycles in life, that there are transitions and changes, and both cycles in the year and cycles within the grander scheme of our lives and the grander scheme of the world. And finally, Gaia. Even though she looks like a rather Botoxed version of Angelina Jolie, I really like her because of the green growingness of her. She does look very natural and wild, and that really appeals to me. Overall, I would say that this is a beautifully executed deck. It's a shame that there isn't a little bit more symbolism within the actual cards. They are mainly very attractive. There's perhaps not a great balance between the three aspects of the goddess, the maiden, mother and crone, but they are all there. And there's a lot of very strong messages here, which I think are positive and uplifting. So overall, if it appeals to you, it's a very good deck, and as I say, the book by Stacey DeMarco is excellent. I hope that you found this review interesting, and please do come back again soon. In the meantime, listen to your own inner whispers.